Buff Nation, what's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome back to another live stream of Common Sense Buffs. It's good to be back with you guys, man. I think for reasons of consistency, I'm just going to keep going live on this channel. I'm going to do my best to keep creating content that's all about the Colorado Buffaloes football team in the Coach Prime era. If this is your first time here, please hit that like so this stream can go out to like minded individuals who want to have common sense conversations about this team. We're not going to be overly hyping, we're not going to be overly hating. We're going to just keep it common sense, keep it factual, but also make sure that it's entertaining. And tonight I have a very special one for you. We're going to be talking on a theme: if nothing changes, then nothing changes. All right. And the Buffaloes are a team. And one of the things I like about Coach Prime is he's the type of coach that's willing to make changes in personnel. And he hinted at the coach's press conference at a major change at the running back spot. We've seen this player play the tailback position in multiple games, but we haven't seen him get the start. And so we're going to be talking about that change at the running back position, but we're also going to be exploring, hopefully you'll join in the conversation in the chat, a couple of other Colorado Buffaloes football related topics before we dive into the new running back one. So thank you guys again for being here. Please hit that like, please hit that subscribe, and let's go. So last game, there was a dismal showing in the running game. And this is something that Colorado Buffaloes fans have been talking about, and we're talking about after the Nebraska game. This is something that Colorado fans were talking about last year. This has been a persistent problem for this team: the inability to run the ball effectively. And when they do run the ball effectively, sticking to the run consistently. And nowhere was it more evident than the loss against KSU. And so this issue of Colorado running the ball has reared its ugly head again. And I think at this point, it is really coming to a boil. And it's not boiling on the fan side of the ledger. I think it's actually boiling over with Coach Pat Shurmur. So here's the first question I want us to explore together. What is the real reason why Colorado is unable to run the ball? Being on live panels, whenever this topic comes up, there are a series of things that are raised as possible issues. And because this issue persists over multiple seasons, the question really isn't whether or not they can run the ball so much, it's whether or not they want to run the ball. So I was watching Well Off Media. I think it was the video that dropped today, and Coach Pat Shurmur, who, I mean, he's the OC, right? He calls the plays. I think he only called about 10 designed runs in the game against KSU. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a part of the talk that Dion usually gives, and he's addressing issues with the team before they go out on the practice field. And Pat Shurmur, for the first time, he's usually a kind of cool, calm, collected guy, and he doesn't get overly excited. But today on Well Off Media, I really started to see the kind of passion that you want to see coming from a coach who has a real determination to address a problem with his team. And essentially what he committed to was, hey, we got to get this run game right, right? In my previous live, what I talked about is the fact that the football gods are fair. You could cheat the game, but you're not going to be able to cheat the game for long. And if you're a team and you're having success and you're winning in spite of ignoring fundamentals of the game, those things are going to catch up to you. So, in my opinion, I think the first issue with Colorado in terms of their run game has been Pat Shurmur's creativity. I was watching 060 podcast. I think that's Matt McChesney's podcast. If you haven't heard of Matt in the 060 podcast, it's hilarious. You should definitely add that to your list of Colorado Buffaloes commentators that you check out. But he was interviewing a former Buffalo, I can't remember the running back's name, who played for the Denver Broncos when Pat Shurmur was the OC there. And, in as many words, I don't want to exaggerate this, but he basically said that Pat Shurmur, because of his lack of creativity, really stifled this running back's career. And so I can't put the blame squarely on the offensive line or the running backs themselves. I think Colorado's issues in the run game start with Pat Shurmur. And it was good to see him kind of get animated about the fact that they aren't having success, and him saying that he was committed to fixing this issue. Now, what does that actually mean? I mean, you guys tell me in the chat. I don't know if you guys saw the well-off video or not. Tell me what you think Pat Shurmur means when he says he's committed to getting this run game right. Does he mean that he's going to run the ball more? Does that mean that he's going to maybe be more creative in the run game? I'm not quite sure, but I think issues in the run game with Colorado start with Pat Shurmur and his play calling. The next thing I think in the run game is the shuffling of the O-line. I think Colorado kind of has their offensive starting lineup dialed in. You guys tell me if you think I'm wrong about that. But I think when they do run the ball, this offensive line gains confidence off of that. And because they're not consistently doing that, they aren't really gelling. I think the game where I started to really get confidence about this team's ability to run the ball was against Baylor. I saw a lot of good things there. And then they repeated it the following week. Now, when you're talking about Colorado, you're not talking about big rushing numbers. But they were actually able to move the pile. They were able to open the hole, and the running backs were able to have success. So I was really, really hopeful for the O-line progression, but I think the O-line's progression was pretty much stunted against KSU because they really didn't get the game time reps. So Pat Shurmur and his play calling and his commitment to it, the O-line kind of shuffling early on in the season, showing some progress, and then having their development stunted in KSU, I think is part of the problem. And then number 3, finding consistency of who your starting running back is going to be. Running the ball is a rhythm thing. It's kind of like a quarterback. Imagine, although some teams can do this well where they have 2 quarterbacks, the running quarterback and the passing quarterback, and you're pulling the quarterback in and out. There's a reason why on your team you do not want a quarterback controversy. You need a QB1, and you just need to play that person, because football at the quarterback position is a rhythm thing. You need that person in game, getting in game experience, taking those hits, getting the completion, and finding their rhythm. And it's also going to build trust with their teammates. I think the Colorado Buffaloes, and this is kind of a perfect segue into the fact that Prime hinted that there is going to be a running back 1 this game, at least a starter. And that running back 1 in this game is Isaiah Augustave. Now, I hope I'm saying this young man's name correct. And when he transferred from Arkansas, and I frequently go on TLP Sports Club with Harry B. He's kind of my mentor in this YouTube thing with the Colorado football. Early on, we were breaking down the running back room after it emptied out. So when Alto left, when Dylan Edwards left, when Hankerson left, when Wilkerson left, and there was basically Charlie Arfudal, right, and Micah Welch. Then we got Dallan Hayden, who committed, and Isaiah Augustave, who committed. I was on the show with Harry B, and we were breaking down the room, and we always have fun on that show. So if Harry B is another guy, TLP Sports, you guys need to check out if you want to have a great laugh. Harry B is absolutely hilarious. He's a real fan of this football team and football in general. So we were breaking down the running back room, and I said, you know what? If I could take a guy who would be my starting running back in this running back room, it would be Isaiah Augustave. Number 1, because I like running backs in the vein of Adrian Peterson, that tall running back, long strides, and a big or more physical running back who has a downhill running style despite the fact that they're very tall, meaning when they are expecting contact, they're going to lower their shoulder and be very hard to bring down by the first tackler. So My favorite running back, the running back I would start, would have been Isaiah Augustave. Season starts, true to his word, Charlie Offerdahl is running back one, right? He'd earned it. He was committed. When that running back room emptied out, Charlie was the go-to guy. I could see why Prime and his personality would start Charlie, which he did. That experiment didn't go too well. Dallan Hayden, kind of two running back set, didn't really play to expectations. It showed some flashes, but wasn't really that home run hitting, that three down back that he was expected to be coming out of OSU. He gets hurt, I think, the second or third game, so he's out, and we finally get to see the dynamic freshman Micah Welch in the a Baylor game, and then again in the UCF game. So everybody is very high on Michael Welch. Unfortunately, I think he pulled his hamstring in the UCF game. You guys in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. I see my boy Graciano down there. Thank you so much for joining the show and commenting in the chat. But I think Micah is out. He's hurt, right? I think he has a hammy. If he's back, he's not really practicing in full pads or at full speed. So Prime during the press conference said that he's going to ease him back into the starting lineup, right? So the expectation is that Micah is going to see some. He's going to get some reps. He's going to get some carries, but they're nursing that injury. They don't want to overplay his hand. He's such a young player. They want to protect him. I think in that running back room, he is the future along with Augustave. So Michael Welch was showing flashes. And then when Augustave got in against Baylor and the run game was starting to find its legs, he had some pretty good runs. And he had a fumble in that game that I think really set him back in terms of rotating that lineup, right? From him being maybe running back four behind Charlie and Dallan Hayden and Michael Welch. I think because of that fumble, he kind of set himself back a little bit. So he did see some playing time. I think he had some flashes. He was running back three against UCF. But hey, like Prime always talks about, it's all about next man up, right? This is college football. When one player goes down, you need to have depth, which Colorado didn't have last year. And fortunately, they have this year. So we get Charlie's probably RB4 right now. Because of the injury, Micah is probably RB3. Dallan, because I think he has the potential, but really hasn't played up to that potential, especially against KSU. But maybe he just didn't get the reps to really get going. He's running back too, so IA gets the start this game. All right, let me go to the chat real quick before we jump into Mr. IA, who he is, his background, and how he gets to be the starter for these Colorado Buffaloes against the Arizona Wildcats this Saturday. Go ahead and hit that like button. I appreciate all of you guys who are in here hitting that like button. And Graciano, thank you for the comment. Graciano says he's committed to be coach and not allow QB2 to override the play calling consistently. Okay, so allowing Shurmur to call audibles from the line of scrimmage. So if I'm hearing you correctly, or I'm reading your comment correctly, what you're saying is that Pat Shurmur is calling run plays. There's no way, based on Pat Shurmur's history with the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos, that he's only calling 10 run plays in an entire football game. What you're saying is that because QB2 or in QB1, but he wears number 2, Shedeur Sanders has the ability to change the play of the line. Many of those changes are being audibled out of, right? That there are running plays called, but Shedeur is audibling the play out. Maybe that could be the case, but maybe because he's now saying on well off, he's going to be committed to not letting that happen. Hopefully we'll see more run play. So great comment there. Let's jump into Isaiah Augustave. Again, thank you guys. Hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe to the show. So who is Isaiah Augustave? Well, he's a running back, and he's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's a sophomore out of Naples, Florida. Now, Coach Prime loves his Florida boys. And if you're a running back out of Florida and you're highly recruited and highly touted like he was, you know you have to be able to play the game of football, right? No way that you're a highly ranked running back in the state of Florida and you're not a baller. His previous school was Arkansas, so he played in the SEC. He got recruited into the SEC. Now, they're not the upper echelon SEC school. They're playing way better this year, but that's not a bad school to be recruited to as a running back. So let me break down a few things. This is coming directly from the Colorado Buffaloes football page. 24/7 Sports lists him with a transfer rating of 0.8700. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Help me out in the chat. As the number 682nd ranked player overall and number 61. So he was the 61st running back in his transfer class, and this is as of July of 2024. He enters Colorado as an undergraduate transfer with 4 years to play 3. So I guess he played enough games in his freshman season that he still has 3 years of eligibility. He played in 11 games as a true freshman. Again, this is in the SEC for Arkansas. And he made his first and only start last year in the regular season against Missouri. Now, Missouri is a great school. They're a great football team, and they're building themselves into a football powerhouse in the SEC. So to get the starting nod against Missouri, that's big for a freshman. He finished 2023 with 35 carries for 202 yards and a touchdown, and he had 3 receptions for 7 yards. And we've seen him catch the ball out of the backfield so far this season. He has sure hands as well. There was a play in the Baylor game where I think Shurmur kind of threw it. He didn't lead him with the pass like you would like to see the quarterback lead the running back coming out of the backfield. That I think he could have turned into a big play. But he has hands, right? And Shurmur trusts him, which is good. So not only do we have a starting running back that I know can run the ball because he's demonstrated that, he's going to be great in this offense because that's one of the things that Shurmur likes to do, the check down to the running back out of the backfield. So the fact that he could catch the ball and make plays in the open field are going to be important against Arizona. So in his freshman season, he registered his first 100-yard rushing game against FIU, where he had 14 carries for 101 yards and a long of 25 yards. So he has that big play ability too, of breaking plays of 10 yards or more, which is what I love about his game. Back to high school, he was a 4-star prospect. On3 had him listed as the number 31 running back in the class and number 71 player in Florida. That's nothing to sneeze at. And then we have a couple of other ranking services that had him ranked very, very high, both in his state and in his position. At Naples in his senior year, he rushed for 1,000 yards, 1,061 to be precise, and he averaged 9.6 yards per carry. Now, I know all of you have seen Ashton Genty. That kid is out of the world. He's averaging a first down. So to think about that in high school, to average 9.6 yards a carry, you're basically averaging a first down every time you touch the ball. And so that's great to have in a running back where the carries are going to be limited in this style of offense, and you have to make the most out of every carry. So hopefully a lot of that carries over from his time in high school, his time at Arkansas, some of the carries that he's seen now at Colorado, the game experience that he has playing on that big stage, playing on the road, and making plays. So very excited to see what Pat Shurmur and the offense does with Isaiah Augustave against the Arizona Wildcats as they attempt to bounce back from the loss against KSU. So in the comments, do you think this is the right choice? Micah's hurt. Dallan started last game. Charlie is an option for you. And then you have Isaiah Augustave. Is Coach Prime, is Pat Shurmur, is Coach Flea making the right call here by starting Isaiah Augustave? All right, so that's on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, where I've been really, really impressed with Colorado and their development over this season had been in their run defense. But we saw KSU watches film, and they just decided, listen, we don't care what they've done up until this point. Our game is to run the ball, and we're going to run the ball and execute. And one of the areas that I was sorely disappointed was the lack of tackling on that defensive side of the ball. And again, watching Well Off Media, one of the coaches that was most expressive about how disappointed they were at how well we played the run against KSU was Coach Andre Hart, the linebacker coach. And Coach Prime said this. He was like, I warned you guys against believing your own hype. And he has this saying where he says, the fans only blow when you're hot, right? They stop blowing when you're not hot. And for a while there, Colorado's run defense was hot. They were stopping everybody. I don't think up until this point anybody had had a 100-yard rushing game against that front seven. And so, do you guys think that because Colorado was playing better and there were a lot of cheers and a lot of newspaper clippings and a lot of, singing of their praises, that they got ahead of their skis and started to believe their own hype? Because what KSU was able to do against that defensive front seven, I was not expecting, right? Especially a running back having the kind of game that Giddens did against this front seven. I thought we were going to be even more stout. And I think what's going to be important for this defense this week is to go back to those fundamentals that had them playing their best football. And I don't think we could take for granted, and also it is only right to give KSU their credit, that they're a good team. They're a ranked team. There's a reason why they're ranked. It's not because they came in there and pulled off a fluke. Running the football is what KSU does. My expectation of the Colorado Buffaloes, knowing that that is what KSU was going to try to do, was to be even better in the run game and to be better tackling. Now, one of the guys who, when you say tackling in Colorado, name always comes up is Shiloh Sanders. And Coach Prime had to say what he had to say. Shiloh had his moment of accountability as well. But one game does not make a player. Shiloh is a critical part of this defense. He was one of the pillars last season, and he's coming off injury, so he had a rough game. I'm interested to see what they do in that safety spot. So in the comments, do we see Shiloh starting again this game? Again, the title of this video, if you don't change, nothing changes. Do we see Shiloh starting again, or do we see a return to Carter Stoutmeyer? I'm going to take a break, see what you guys have to say in the comments, and drink some water. Because that's another thing that you want to find some consistency. I felt like the combination of Silman Craig and Carter Stoutmeyer were playing really well together. And I felt like Silman Craig didn't really have the kind of game he's been having now that he was back there with Shiloh. So much like you need to find rhythm on the offense, I think defense is a very rhythmic game, and having guys who can play off of each other and support each other. If you watch like Reach the People Media, the two guys who are always practicing together are Silman Craig and Carter Stoutmeyer. In multiple interviews, Silman Craig has pointed out the fact that Carter Stoutmeyer is a guy who seeks his advice on how to play the game. He's always watching film. He's always willing to put in the extra hours. He's always willing to stay after practice and work out with Silman Craig. So I'm very interested to see how we address our issues with the run game, because Arizona is going to have this tape like everybody will. How do we get better at tackling this week? How does Andre Hart get the law firm of Hill, Green, and Bentley back on track, right? Continuing to play all Big 12 type games like they are supposed to. So that was my issue on the defensive side of the ball. The other thing is protecting the lead and knowing how to win. I mean, that deep in the game with the lead, man, why are we giving up 2-play touchdown drives in the fourth quarter, right? Why are we not making the changes necessary to make the opposing team work their way down the field versus being able to go 2 plays and score? I think that was a big letdown in that game, and I think that's a very important lesson. Uh, Graciano, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the engagement, man. Isaiah Augustave did a very good job at UCF. I agree. But I think in the UCF game, he was running back three, right? Because that was the game I think Micah may have pulled his hamstring in. And I think Dallan got a couple carries, including a carry for a touchdown as well. And then Isaiah came in late in the game to kind of be that closeout player and show that he had the burst, that he has the vision. I think he runs really well with his eyes. He's going to be able to find the hole, hit the hole, and make a play. He even had that late rushing touchdown against KSU, on the goal line. So he's a guy that I really, really like, man. He would have been my starter from the beginning, but again, Coach Prime, his staff are still trying to figure out who those guys are. And we have to remember, I don't know how many of you are willing to put in the chat your record prediction for the year, but I had this team going 8-4. Right now they're 4-2. And 6 games into the season, we still have what would that be? Another 6 games to go. Right. So at this point, I think the O-line rotation is pretty much figured out. We know the wide receivers, man, a lot of injuries in that room. My understanding from Shurmur in his interview on his podcast that now that Omarion is out and we're wishing him a speedy recovery, he's out for the year. I think Jordan I can't pronounce his last name, is going to be a starting wide receiver. So this team is still trying to figure out the lineup in a lot of places. Even with that, though, they still have a winning record. They're 4-2. There are many teams in the Big 12 who would like to be in Colorado's position. But I think as fans, our expectation for this team are so high, in the way that they lost to Nebraska and the way that they lost to KSU were so disappointing. Like, we feel this team let one slip with KSU. They definitely lost against Nebraska, but we didn't expect them to lose the way that they lost. But this is still a team trying to figure it out. Players who are playing together for their very first season, and to be 4-2, that's very commendable. The last thing I'm going to talk about on this, and then I'm going to drop off, and then you guys can jump in the comment, continue the conversation, is around Rob Livingston, right? Talk about reading your own press. We have been singing his praises as Coach Prime's best hire to date at that DC spot. But there's one thing that I think people are picking up on our tendencies when it comes to his play calling, which is our tendency to play a lot of man. And man puts a lot of our cover guys, our secondary, with their back to the ball against running teams. And I think that was some of the issue around why KSU was able to get their running game going early, and they were able to sustain it throughout the game. I'd be very interested in terms of changes for this game, whether or not we're going to see less predictability around our play calling in the secondary. Are we going to play a lot more zone? Are we going to be able to disguise our coverages much better to keep the offensive coordinator guessing? Graciano says, I really can't say 8-4 until we see how they do this week. That's fair. They got Arizona this week, and I think they got Cincinnati after that. So 2 games that are very winnable, but you can't take any opponent for granted. So it says if they can execute the run game as well as UCF and CSU, then it is possible. Yeah, it's definitely possible. 8-4 is definitely possible. So let's just say this: 6-6 is a much improvement over 2023, but I think that would still be considered, given that they're already 4-2 at this point in the season, a collapse in the second half of the season, right? You only win 2 out of 6 games, right? And the 2 games I guess you got to win are against Arizona, Cincinnati, maybe Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is a high-powered offense that is going to be a shootout. You just have to expect that. So I think 6-6 would be an improvement over last year, but people will ignore that because it would represent a collapse in the second half of the year. 7-5 is definitely a strong showing. It would demonstrate that you had some struggles, but you played some tough teams, and maybe they really came down to the wire like the KSU game. But 8-4, I think, is if they really take all the lessons learned over the first 6 games and win out and repeat the first half of the season and go 4-2 again for the rest of the year, which I think is within striking distance, right? I think that's a fair expectation. 8-4 might even put them in the running. BYU is dominating right now, so I'm giving BYU the nod to be in the Big 12 championship, and KSU, because of the win that they had over us, they could potentially, again, it's college football. Anybody could beat anybody, but it puts them in a very, very strong position to be that second team in the Big 12 championship. There's a lot of games still to be played. There are a lot of adjustments still to be made, and I'm confident that Colorado is going to continue to learn the lessons game over game and play even better. All right, y'all. You rocked out with me, man, especially Graciano. Thank you so much. I appreciate the engagement. All of y'all, man, who hit that like button, who hit that subscribe button. This is Common Sense Buffs. Is this your first time here? We invite you to join this community. Let me know what kind of content you want me to produce by leaving some comments down there. I'm going to try to get on live much more frequently. It's just a little bit easier to do lives versus sitting down for a recorded video with edits. But I thank you guys so much. I hope as you follow Colorado and you see their success, that you're living out your dreams and being successful. You're putting your work in that you need to put in to hit your highest potential. All right, y'all. Until next time, Skol Buffs.